Now let's look at the Indian history of labor market regulation. We'll consider data starting in 1958 and running up through the early 90s, when India engaged in some serious economic reforms. And this analysis and the underlying data, it's taken from Can Labor Regulation Hinder Economic Performance? Evidence from India by Timothy Besley and Robin Burgess. The key point here will be that trying to overprotect labor through excessive regulation can actually hurt laborers and also hurt the interests of the poor. Let's see how this works. The Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 is a key piece of legislation here. This is federal law, and it sets out the procedures to be followed when there's some kind of labor dispute. But it's not just a federal law. The way the Indian system of government works, there are also state-level amendments, which of course vary by state, and over the time period we're looking at, there are 113 amendments to consider, and the authors of the study classify these, at least superficially, as being pro-worker, pro-employer, or neutral. For instance, an amendment which made it harder to fire workers would be classified as pro-worker, which at least on the surface it might appear to be. Again, these amendments will be varying across different Indian states. The states which take a neutral stance toward labor market regulation, they're listed here. The states which take a pro-employer stance are listed here. And finally, these are the 4 states which are classified as having a pro-worker stance in their amendments. The thing is, not all of these states have had the same economic performance when it comes to manufacturing. For India as a whole, manufacturing output over this period grew at about 3.3%, but some states did better than others. For instance, in West Bengal, it grew at a rate of only about 1.5% a year, and in Andhra Pradesh, it grew at a rate of about 6% a year. What we find in the data is that overall, perhaps counterintuitively, it's the states which had the pro-employer amendments which have done better in terms of manufacturing growth. Why might this be? Besley and Burgess, the authors, think it has something to do with investment. If a state implements a lot of regulations which ostensibly are pro-labor, this limits the incentive for investment, so fewer jobs will be created and the manufacturing sector will be more robust. When employers and investors have stronger rights vis-à-vis labor, this actually increases the incentive for investment. So passing laws which appear to boost the rights of labor may in some ways be counterproductive. Besley and Burgess think this is actually a fairly large effect. Here's a quotation from their paper. Quote, "If West Bengal had not passed any pro-worker amendments, it would have enjoyed a registered manufacturing output that was 24% higher than its 1990 level, and employment that was 23% higher." In other words, that would mean more jobs. When it comes to manufacturing, we can see there's been a relative change of fortune across various Indian states. So in the year 1960, the pro-worker states actually had the higher per capita manufacturing output, but by the time 1990 rolls around, that's simply no longer true. Here are some other results from the paper. First, the so-called pro-worker laws, they don't much harm agricultural output. This suggests that what the researchers are identifying is an actual connection between the pro-worker laws and slower growth in the manufacturing sector. It suggests that the pro-worker laws are not just some kind of proxy for other mistakes in economic policy, because if they were such a proxy, you would think that would harm agricultural output as well. The authors also find that these pro-worker laws don't very much harm the construction sector. Those laws are not applied there, by the way. It's also the case that having a lot of pro-worker laws in a state, it appears to boost the informal sector, which suggests there's substitution. So if one sector is highly regulated, what a lot of individuals do who still want to manufacture something in that state, well, they move to the informal economy where they're not subject to the same regulations. And overall, they also find that pro-worker laws in general do not boost wages. Finally, when supposedly pro-worker laws are applied in an individual state, this means in the data that urban poverty goes up relative to the basic trends in India at the time. This study by Besley and Burgess, it's an important paper, and as you can imagine, it's created a fair amount of controversy. The main result may seem counterintuitive, but it's actually in accord with some pretty standard economic reasoning. And the basic point is, what makes workers better off is higher productivity. Simply using the law to try to redress the balance between employers and workers, it may either be ineffective or it may backfire altogether. If you'd like to read more about this area, here are two papers we recommend. The first is about India, and the second is a more general look at the topic, and both are available online.